Okay, today I want to talk to you about Tiptoe, which is a 5-part drama that broadcasted on Channel 4 a couple of weeks ago now, probably about a month ago. The first few episodes came out, and it's written by the wonderful Russell T Davies, who's a man that I love massively. So we'll start at the beginning. The spoilers going ahead, by the way. We open with like a pan down over the city of Manchester into a little suburban street, which feels comfortable to pretty much everyone watching it, as I assume majority of us live in a street that looks remotely similar to the one that we see on screen. And we see Leo, our main character, hanging from a lamppost, which was so deeply disturbing for me to see that. It was very, very tough to watch. I knew that the series opened with Leo being dead, but I didn't know it was in that particular way, and it was harrowing. We then flash back 10 days, Leo gets locked out of his house, and he works at Spit and Polish, which is a bar on Canal Street, and it looks like such a vibe, such a place that I'd want to be. It's always, it's on my bucket list to go to a gay bar at some point and just experience that walk of life, because that's not the path that I go down myself, but that doesn't mean I don't want to check it out. That place is full of so many unique and fun feeling characters, my favourite being Melba. I love Melba. Melba is, I believe, similar age to Leo, so probably late 50s, 60s, and there's a great sequence of scenes where Melba and Leo go on a night out on Canal Street, and they are watching a drag queen stand-up comedy thing, when Melba, and we all know someone like Melba, we all know a Melba who cannot just listen to BS. Melba has to actually stand up to it. So one of the drag queens on stage has a husband who has money in care homes that shower old people down by hosing them, and Melba stands up to this and immediately is just like, do you even know what drag is? Drag is a protest. It's not Margaret Thatcher. And I love that scene so much. It was released online before the series began as like a teaser for us to all see it and get excited about, and it really did get me excited, because Melba's like, I wear this lipstick and these eyelashes, and it's not for people like you to come and ruin it. And even though you don't have to agree with that point that Melba's making, because like whatever that drag queen's husband does is nothing really to do with them, but we all know someone like Melba who would cause a fuss like that. And there's a brilliant chat, like the whole chat between Leo and Melba on Canal Street sat outside, where Melba's like, history, it tells me one thing, that blood and fire and retribution always happens, and right now it's coming for us. What happens if Trump keeps winning? You are on the front line, Leo. You have trans bar staff. That whole scene is brilliant. If you haven't seen the whole show, just like watch the whole show, but that scene, that sequence of scenes in particular, I think out of the 5 episodes, it's bad because it's like near the beginning of the first episode. It peaked that early. I love that sequence of scenes so much. And it was a great eye-opener for me, who's someone who obviously isn't in the gay community or the LGBTQIA plus community. It's nice to get an insight. It's an eye-opener, because these are things that I just never think about. And I'm privileged to not think about, but it's such a shame that our friends and family over in that walk of life have to live in that fear every day. And sadly, we are moving backwards. We were walking in the right direction. That's something Melba says. Melba says, and it breaks my heart to hear Melba say, they hate us, and I think they've always hated us. They just don't have to pretend anymore. Because, like, I don't hate gay people, I don't hate trans people, I don't hate anyone in that walk of life. However, there are people who I guarantee do hate those type of people, and probably always did, but just weren't allowed to speak up about it. And that's sad. And the internet is radicalizing people like you wouldn't believe at the minute. Later on in that episode, Leo and Clive have a little bit of a like back and forth, like a fiery chat where they are starting to get heated with each other. And Clive's an electrician, and says to Leo, have you got any work on? And Leo's like, no, I haven't got any work on. And then after their big heated debate, Leo tries to calm the air by saying, look, we have got some work on, come and work for us, Clive. And that really does like settle the air, and that's a clever way. That's something I really like about Russell. He always just comes up with a clever way to get 2 characters in a room that need to be there at the same time. Really good stuff. I will say Leo has a subplot that I'm not really into at all, and it's him and his ex-boyfriend Curtis. That whole plotline, it didn't interest me, I'm not gonna lie, but there's a whole thing about Leo's ex-boyfriend. He's now with a woman, and they're gonna adopt a child, and Leo kicks off, and it was interesting to get that view into Leo's head. But if that was cut from the episode, I wouldn't have complained personally. That's one of the very few downsides I have with this series. Melba's my favourite character, but I think the best character of the whole show is Sol, because he is the son of Clive, who's the next door neighbour, who's a bit his mind's been taken over by the internet and sort of I suppose you could say he's right wing. And Clive has two sons. One is George, who is gay, and one is Sol, who is on Instagram, on OnlyFans, sorry, not Instagram. And Sol is probably the best character because he doesn't care what anyone else does. There's a beautiful scene in episode 5 where Sol says to George, like, I don't care what you do, just please be safe. Don't get yourself into a situation where you can have the mick taken out of you, or you could be genuinely hurt by these things. And I love that so much. And like, there's moments of Sol, like every character needs to be flawed. Sol does sort of plot to go against Leo at one point, and there's other things like that. But overall, he's a very decent bloke, and he is the only person who at the climax of the show was trying to stop that event from happening. And I love him for that. There's a whole sequence of scenes in, I believe, episode 4, where Leo and... Oh, no, is it episode 3? Episode 3, I think it is, where Clive is going through Leo's stuff, and he goes through Leo's computer, and he finds text messages between Leo and George. And that, to me, is like the perfect example of like, oh, if only that didn't happen, we would be in a better place right now. And that is such a great, that's a signal of great writing. Is you make people go, oh, if only that didn't happen. And that is the perfect way to write a story, write a frustrating but really gripping drama. We're meant to feel bad for Clive because realistically, Clive isn't a bad person. He just has bad views because of the internet. We see him looking at videos of people getting shot, being hung, just deaths online. And he obviously looks at things like HIV is not real and all that stuff like that. And it's taking over his brain, which is how it works. Majority of the people who think opposite to the way that I think and the way that majority of us think is they aren't actually bad people. They're just being brainwashed to think these bad things, where if we can convert them back to our way, then we'd all be happier. It's the problem comes down to the phones, and I think that's what Tiptoe is trying to get across to people, because Clive has moments, and this is the thing that really annoyed me about the show, is Clive has these great moments of development. For example, another one of my favourite scenes in the entire show is when Clive is in Spit and Polish at night time, and one of the drag members, whose name is Martin, gets punched whilst they're in drag by one of their students, because they're also a teacher, and Clive goes up to the student and just knocks him out and helps up Martin from the floor. And that, I genuinely almost started to cry when I was watching that, because it's such great development. But then Clive goes back to being a massive knob and ridiculing Leo about HIV not being real. But then there's another great moment of development where Clive says thank you to Leo, and Leo has this great triumphant moment and he bows, and that's great. And then it's all happy days, but then he starts being annoying to Marie. And it's like, Clive, and I don't know, I assume it's intentional, but it also felt a bit clunky in the writing department. Like, what are you trying to get across here? Like, I suppose the point could just be that Clive is a good guy on the inside, but he's being radicalised by the internet. But it just feels jarring to watch, even if that is the case. It's just jarring to watch him get these moments of, like, I'm not being funny. The final episode, he finds out that George is gay. George comes out and everybody celebrates for him and is like, I'm proud of you, George. Sol gets exposed to being on OnlyFans, and Clive's just like, you know what, get in, son. Get in, George. Well done. I'm proud of you. And then a picture of George in makeup comes up, and then Clive decides to hang his neighbour from a lamppost. I don't understand that. That to me feels like jarring. That's jarring to watch, and it doesn't feel great. Like, I think if George's coming out made Clive do that, it would be understandable, but you're okay with your son coming out as gay but not wearing makeup. I don't get it. To me, that doesn't work, but maybe people like Clive think like that. But it just felt a bit jarring for me to watch, if I'm being completely honest. Now, this feels a bit similar to Douglas is Cancelled, which I've reviewed a couple of months ago now, where episode 3 does a jump back to before episode 1. And a great way, because I didn't realise this was a jump back, because there was a week in between episode 2 and episode 3, so I forgot the big cliffhanger of episode 2, and instead went straight into episode 3 thinking this was just present day. But then we get the card through the door from Denise Welch's character saying, fuck off. And that is the card that was in Clive's van in episode 2 when Leo finds it. And it's a really clever way of telling us this happened in the past without actually telling us this happened in the past. Although other people probably figured that out, I'm just not very smart. The end scene was so harrowing. I watched it when it dropped on on Channel 4 on demand. I watched the final 3 episodes as they released, and it was about 1 a.m. by the time I finished the third one, or the fifth one, the final one. And I felt like I couldn't sleep. It was just harrowing, and it was horrible. And the way they just kept saying, like, hoist him, you put your flag everywhere, this is our flag, that this street is safe from our children. and they hoist him up. And then when Leo dies 3 years later, his name on the internet says convicted paedophile. It just shows how easy it is to change things on the internet, and it's so sad. It is sad. It's depressing. But Confused Adipose, Joe Street, raised a great point with this, and it's kind of a happy ending because this hasn't happened yet. There's still time for us to change. The problem is the people who this show is made for have watched it and gone, not realistic. Not realistic because that hasn't happened. That hasn't happened, so therefore it's not realistic. No. It hasn't happened. A group of football lads have not hung their neighbour in the street like a witch trial. They haven't done that. But they could do that. That absolutely could happen in this day and age. If I went on the news tomorrow morning and found out that last night a bunch of football hooligans hung their neighbour on a lamppost for being gay, I would not be surprised, because that's the world that we live in. So yeah, it's unrealistic because it hasn't happened, but it's realistic because it could happen. And it's sad because it happened in the show, but it's happy because it's not happened in real life yet. We have time to change. If you know anybody who has views like Clive and you think it's because of their algorithms on their phone, please try to convince them to change. It's the only way forward, because it's hateful and it's horrible for someone to be discriminated against simply for who they are. It's horrible, and I won't stand for it, because I was part of that group once. I was part of the internet taking over my brain and telling me all this stuff about women and gays and trans people, and, you know, women, they should be stay-at-home wives and the man owns the woman, or trans people are mentally ill, or gay people make it up for attention. That is not the case for any of those things, and I'm lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones, because I broke out of it. And now I'm so happy for who I am, and I'm not going to hide away from that past and be like, I didn't do or say any of that, because that there are people out there who are who I used to be, and you can break out of it, and you will be so much more happier when you realise that love is the way forward. This video ended on a completely different way than I thought it would. Tiptoe on Channel 4, a brilliant show, brilliant cast, brilliant writing, brilliant pacing, fabulous, harrowing, haunting, funny. It's brilliant. Give it a watch if you haven't, even though I've just spoiled it for you massively. Let me know in the comments what you rank the show, and I'll be back soon. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, leave a dislike if you didn't enjoy the video. Subscribe with the notification bell on. I'll post here every now and then whenever I've got something to talk about. Thank you for watching. I've been Sam. I'll see you later, and ta-ra.